so my first pregnancy was twins, which was fun. And so I wanted to have a home birth on that occasion, but they ended up being a high risk twins, and then it was COVID, and there were just too many factors that decided against us on that occasion. So I had my twins by caesarean birth, which actually was a lovely birth in itself. The aftercare, not so great, and the recovery, not so great. I would never advocate for a. People think it's like a good option. They're like, oh yeah, let's go caesarean. Like, it's not a good option. But the boys were born, and that was lovely. But off the back of that and various other reasons, COVID, meaning I was very much by myself at the beginning in hospital. I got quite bad kind of postnatal anxiety. I don't know whether it can be linked as well sometimes to caesarean birth, in that it's such a quick birth. There's no process of meeting the babies, and suddenly I had two. So so it was quite a challenge, the beginning of being a mother for me, being COVID as well, and twins, and caesarean birth recovery. So I knew that if we had another baby, that I would want things to be very different. Also, I found it harder to it's quite vocal. It was just a very challenging time especially as a first mother, and I feel really like the whole experience could have been very different. Also because, side note, but when I had the operation, they tell you not to do anything. I had twins and it was COVID, so I ruptured the wound. This is like, all the side effects they don't really tell you about caesarean birth. And then I had to go back in and have the whole operation again and leave my children at home, and that was really traumatic as well. So I got quite a lot of separation anxiety off the back of that. So all in all, that birth wasn't ideal all round. Knew that if we did it again, I would want it to be very different. So then we got pregnant with you, didn't we? The twins called her in. They told me I was pregnant with a girl, which was right. And we were actually, when we got pregnant, we were actually in Frome. So we were living there, and I was exploring different doulas. So also main note, when we had the twins as well, that my husband also, because I'd said at the beginning that I wanted to have a home birth, and we were doing hypnobirthing as well, and natural birthing and all that, and he was really sceptical about home births at that point. And obviously then it was kind of taken out of our hands with the boys being high risk and various other things. But then in the meantime, in the sort of 4 years, my twins are 4 years old now, in those 4 years, his sister had an amazing home birth. 2 of my best friends had an amazing home birth. I then convinced 2 of my other friends to have a home birth, and all was amazing. And then I thought, we better have a home birth. So he, in that period as well, was swayed. So when it came round to this, it was like, no brainer, we're having a home birth. So that was great. We didn't have to I didn't have to get him on side that time round. And so we were in Frome, so I was kind of exploring doulas in that area. And because I had had a caesarean the first time round, the advice is always to have a second caesarean, which is kind of crazy. And also, again, one of those, I don't know if anyone's done the kind of hypnobirthing, they always talk about the risks as well. So when you say, the risks of having the natural birth, you go, well, what's the other way around as well? What are the risk factors if I don't do that? And so again, I had the caesarean with the boys, and actually, so a bit of the attachment this time with the placenta was because of my scar tissue. So it's like stuff like that they don't tell you as well, right? What happens in the first birth, does it relate to the second birth? So the advice was caesarean birth, and I very kindly said, no, thank you, I'm fine, I want to go ahead with a natural birth and a home birth. So they were like, okay. And in the early stages, they just sort of went along with it. They were like, okay, and through they sort of straight away allocated me a home birth midwife, which was great. And then I was speaking to the doula, and then very last minute we moved here randomly. That's a different story. And so that was quite late, wasn't it? When was that? I must have been about. We went travelling in Sri Lanka for a month, and I think I was like maybe 30. No, I don't know. But I was quite pregnant at that point with her, and we moved here. And I was like, okay, so I'm going to have to find another doula. And then someone recommended Julian to us, and I was going to, and then we started in your pregnancy yoga classes. And same advice again, because obviously I had to change midwives here. And the first thing they said was, we advise you to have a cesarean birth. And then they said, look, we're going to book you in with a consultant because you have to be consultant-led. And Gillian, you came along with me to that appointment, didn't you? And you said, you don't have to go, but I thought, I'll go. But I knew what they were going to say to me. But I still went. And actually, I knew what they were going to say to me, which was, your advice for home birth, these are all the risks, blah, 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 blah. So it did sort of freak me out a little bit, as you can imagine it would. So then I came back, and I remember going, oh, okay, maybe I don't want to do this. So then I did quite a lot of research. I read all the books about VBACs and actually weighed out the stats and realised that actually that I was more at risk of dying in a car crash on the way to the hospital than I would be at actually having a rupture, which is the thing they were worried about all the way through my birth. Like with cesarean, they worry that the whole wound will rupture open. But again, there's various levels of that. It's very rare that it happens, and there's loads of warning signs as well. All that stuff, that's the stuff they don't tell you. There's always ways to like navigate. So again, they said we advise you to we also advise you to be in hospital and monitored all the time. So I said if I am going to be in, I'm definitely not being monitored all the time. I'll be monitored intermittently. But anyway, after going back to the book and doing a bit of research and thinking about it over the next few weeks, again, I kind of re-empowered myself and was like, no, I want to do this. I'm doing home birth. So then I actually cancelled all the rest of the appointments with the doctor, because I just, just keep telling me the same thing. And I was off guidelines at this point. So they were like, you know the risks that I do. I know the risks, and I did know the risk, and I felt kind of empowered in knowing the risks because I knew that the risks were very minimal compared to. In fact, the risk of birthing in a hospital comes with so many risks, whereas birthing at home in the safe, amazing environment is so much. I was much more likely to have a positive feedback, vagina both post cesarean, being at home than I was in hospital, because a lot of people have a natural birth and then it doesn't like lots of birth, it doesn't go through the VBACs, but that's the same as any birth, isn't it? They don't always sadly go all the way, but you're much more likely to have a successful birth, no matter what it is, VBAC or home, being at home, because that's the safe environment. If that's the safest environment for you, obviously. If you feel really safe in a hospital and that's lovely, then go in there. But I didn't. I'm a little sceptic of the doctors. So we were on our own at this point. They kind of said, right, you know the risks. And we had Gillian, but we also had lovely Deborah. So they were a paired team because you both had clients. Is that right? A different sort of, just to make sure that we could cover the bases, which was very lucky because we needed to. So that's the preamble. Took us to the point where we were going ahead with it. So we'd all decided, we got the birth pool, got it all ready, got excited. Hadn't decided what we were going to do with the twins, whether we were going to have them there or not. And luckily we didn't have to make that decision because mine came 2 weeks early when the twins were at my mum's for the weekend, which is probably why I went into labour, because my body went, now! So the labour, so then we had a bit of a higgledy labour. So because obviously, and being a VBAC as well, I got 2 midwives at my home birth, which is even better. I was like, great. So I went into on Friday, my plug came out, and I thought, okay, so I notified you guys. Well, we did all the the other lovely thing about going with a doula as well is you do all the classes and the work with them beforehand and the breathing, and then I was doing Gillian's pregnancy yoga, so I was feeling really good when I came around to the birth. I was feeling really strong. I stuck all my manifestations around the room. Even though she came early, which I wasn't quite ready for that, I was feeling ready for the birth. I got to the point where I was like, the doubts had gone. I was like fully ready for it. And so my plug went on the Friday night, and I thought, oh, okay, things might happen. I went for a massage on the Saturday, and things started ramping up. Cancelled my mother blessing. Yeah, so I was meant to be having a blessing way to celebrate pregnant mummy before baby came on the Sunday. But we had to cancel it because I was sort of in labour, so that was we have to do a welcome ceremony. So I was kind of in and out of contractions all day, and I was at home obviously at that point anyway. And then It got to Saturday night and things were sort of ramping up. It was kind of the middle of the night, so we called Gillian. And we'd just been at home, just having a nice time really, just like watching TV, mooching, having a bath. And Gillian, so this is there's a hospital entry, but it's a false start, just so you know. So basically, Gillian came over, and then because I was sort of high risk, they were like, call the midwife slightly earlier so they can get to you. So we called the midwives, and they said no, because this is the thing, there's no home birth midwives available tonight. Great. So, and someone had said to me, you can just go ahead, and they will probably send out one because they have to, or just go ahead without them, and someone might show up. But again, just on my part, because of it being slightly high risk, I wanted to be slightly monitored in the early stage to check. And because my plug had come and there was a little bit of fluid and I didn't know, I wanted to check, I wanted to check whether it was the waters breaking or not. So we said, okay, well, let's go into the hospital to check whether the waters have broken, because then I can rest assured. And if we have to be in the hospital to birth the baby, I'd rather get there earlier, is what I thought, and like set up and get a nice space and get myself, you know, if this is where we're going. But I was already pissed off at that point. And Marnie did not want to be one in the hospital. So we got to hospital and they checked and were like, no, it's not my fluids. And as soon as I knew it wasn't my fluids and Marnie realised we were in hospital, everything stopped. So we were in the room for a few hours with not much happening. And so we said, we're going to go home actually. And carry on at home. And the midwife was actually really great about it. She's like, yeah, I would go back, have some rest. And she said to me, because this was on Sunday, just so you know, there's no home birth midwives available all day Sunday. So that probably registered as well. So I was like, okay, so don't have the baby on all day. So we went home a bit tired, and then we had a really lovely day, and I didn't have the boys there, and it was the summer. We should have born in July, so we were in the garden, we went for a nice walk, had a puzzle on the go, so a bit of puzzling. A couple of my girlfriends who were meant to be at the blessing way did come over, and we sat in the garden and just like pulled some cards and did some crystals, and I was just having gentle contractions all the way through the day, so it was kind of lovely. And perhaps knowing she was like, I'm not being born in hospital. And so then Sunday night came, and then again the contractions sort of ramped up, but they were sort of every 20 minutes, but I just kept falling asleep really peacefully, so much so that my partner didn't even know that was happening all night. And in the morning he just woke up and I said, so I've been having contractions all night, and I think they're a bit closer now. So we called Gillian. Actually, I called you just to get the TENS machine off you, because in the night I'd just been breathing through them, and it was it's amazing what the body does. I had been able just to drop straight back off to sleep, and then 20 minutes later sat up and would just like breathe through it. But then I thought, okay, would quite like the TENS machine back, because we'd left it at the hospital. So Gillian said, I'll just pop over and give you the TENS machine. And then when she got there, it was like, I think you're all kind of in labour here. So. And then I think background, I didn't realise that Gillian, sadly, this is the one day that Gillian couldn't be there. So she was with me, I think when she came in, gave me the TENS machine, and then thought, okay, I think I'm about to have the baby. Called the midwife, and they're like, home birth team available. We're like, yeah, home birth team available. She knew. The first thing I did, so I went downstairs and I made myself, this is a good tip, I made myself a cacao. I don't know if you guys like drinking cacao, like good, strong, like ceremonial cacao. And I swear, like, I did not even get tired in the birth at all. And it was my first labour, so I've had 2 babies, but it was my first labour, so I made myself a really strong cacao, and I'd been manifesting with my cacao all the way through about my home birth anyway, so then I was like drinking my cacao. And then the midwives arrived, and it was really lovely. So I'd set up 2 spaces. I'd set up her room actually, which isn't really her room yet anyway, so it was just a space. But I'd had my manifestations around and all my lovely things and cards and my yoga mat there and my birthing ball. So I was up there at the beginning, and Deborah then arrived, but I was sort of didn't know what was going on, and she was like, I'm afraid I've got to go. I was like, what? But amazingly, who was brilliant, Deborah's also brilliant. Deborah just sort of stepped in and was there, so I was like, okay, great. And it was seamless. And so I was upstairs, actually having a lovely time. I did a yoga practice and was drinking my cacao and like breathing through the contractions on the ball. And then the midwives were like, because there were 2 of them there, so that was brilliant. And they said, because it's a home birth, we know that you very much want to kind of keep to yourself a bit, so we're kind of going to stay out of the way and just tap in when you need us. So we'll come in. And she said, do you mind if I intermittently? And I said, yes, and I also don't mind you doing it from now on. You don't need to ask me every time. I'd rather you just sort of did it. So She also said we want things to ramp up a little bit. We want you to get into a bit more active labour because we don't really want to have to go home. But so she said, why don't you go for a walk? So me and Jamie went for a walk. That really got things going. I only walked to the end of the drive basically and around the garden a few times, and then came back in. They're like, and that's got things fully established now. So that was really nice. Just had a lovely walk around the garden, and then I got back into the house. Oh yeah, you're tired, aren't you? And then I was like, okay, I'm not going back upstairs at this point. So we'd set up, Jamie had been setting up the birth ball, I assume. I think that had been happening, yeah. The birth ball had been set up with the help of Deborah and I think the midwives. And again, so then at that point the midwife did say to me, okay, at this point I'm going to advise you to go to the hospital because you're VBAC. And I said, are you telling me that because you have to? Or are you telling me that because you're genuinely concerned about my state? And she said, I would just lose my job if I didn't say that, but I'm not actually remotely concerned about you or the baby. So I was like, cool, thank you for being honest. So, because she could have said, well, I think you should, but she didn't. So I was like, okay, cool, we're going to stay. And the baby, Marnie, you were fine all the way through, weren't you? So she was having a lovely time in there. And it was all very relaxed. And then, so then I was downstairs and the pool, but at first I got the birthing ball downstairs and I hit the tunes. We turned up the tunes at this point. Things were getting a bit stronger. Had some Haribo. But still I still wasn't tired. I was still feeling really great. I think the cacao honestly got me through, didn't it? You're a cacao baby. And then I was sort of dancing, and Deborah was amazing with me. She was right there the whole way through, just telling me what I needed to see. Jan was kind of back end. He was fill the birthing pool, make sure the towels are there, check everyone's got food, check everyone's happy, music's okay, sideline stuff, which I think was brilliant because I think he sort of needed a job as well. And then Deborah was my woman who was there, being you can do this, and also because he'd never done a birth as well. So the idea of having someone for both of us was really reassuring to know that. I mean, the midwives also do that, obviously, or you can just go with the flow, but it was really nice knowing for both of us that someone has done this many times. So she was my front lady, and Jan was, sorting out everything else behind. And then when I really needed it, we did a lot of the partner work as well, the hanging off him. So when I kind of really needed him, he was there for some of the contractions. And I remember at that point the midwife was this is such a fun home birth, woohoo! And everyone was dancing around the kitchen and because it's amazing, between the contractions you sort of go back to sanity and have a bit of a normal conversation, but I was actually weirdly kind of enjoying them, breathing through them, dancing through them. And then I said, well, when can I have the gas and air? And Deborah said, well, you can just try it whenever you like it. So we tried the gas and air and I liked that. And I think I liked it because of the sound, and it makes when you can breathe into it, so it's long, deep breath. So it was helped me regulate my breath. So we did the gas and air, which was for a bit, which was nice actually. Some people don't like it and makes people sick, but no, I liked it, it was lovely. And then I think we were well, let's get in the pool. It's blown up, it's ready to go. It took, I'll tell you what, we made the pool too cold, I think. And so then it was too hot, and then we waited for it to cool down. But it was sort of perfect timing, because then by the time we got in the pool, it was lovely temperature, and we were just milling around in the pool, weren't we? Well, you weren't, you were in my belly. And yeah, it was very nice being in the pool. And again, Deborah was kind of my front woman. I was sort of hanging off the side of the pool and rolling around and having a swim. Then it's so hard to know time scales, so I don't know how long anything was going on for, but things sort of wrapped up quite quickly when I was in the pool actually. I was I think I should get out of the pool because it made things faster. They're no, I think that's just what's meant to be happening. I was okay. So we were in the pool, and then we started bearing down, and so things started getting a bit more intense. But again, I was just gas and airing it. I could come to the side of the pool, gas and air, and I was kind of just, at this point I probably got into my own headspace a little bit. And Deborah again was just there being amazing, was telling me I could do it. You hit that transition point. And I knew in my head, I know what transition is. As soon as I start saying I can't do it, then I know I'm in transition. So it was a weird process where I was I don't know if I can do this. I know I'm in transition, but no, actually, I honestly don't think I can do this. I know I'm in transition. And so then, you know, and it's like the baby, the natural process of the baby coming down and up as it gets pregnant. I was like, but she just keeps going down again. I want her to stay down, not go up again. So she was coming down and up, and then it got to that amazing point when they said, we can feel her head. So we felt her head, and we were like, her head feels really, really squishy. Amazingly, she was still in her waters. So her waters were intact. So I was like, the head feels very squishy. Is that normal? Yeah, very squishy head. And yeah, so then amazingly, she was born in her waters. So I actually came out of the pool for her to be born. And so I actually didn't see that moment, sadly, but the Deborahs had never seen her in the water birth, and a couple of the other midwives. So they were all like, wow, as she came out. And sadly, we didn't capture the moment, but, or know what song she came out to. But she came out, so on the sofa, technically. So I hopped out the pool, and Marnie was born in her waters. What are you doing? So which is why she was really chilled the whole way through as well. And so she was very and she was very chilled. So she came straight onto my chest. And so so just before I got out of the pool, there was a tiny bit. Yeah, do you want to just like put on her shoulder and maybe just jolt her? There was a little bit of blood in the pool, so they were like, oh, we don't know what that's from, so you need to get out of the pool. I was like mid pushing. I was like, wait, do I push her in or suck her back out? Because she's like about to come out. Like, I don't know, just get out of the pool. I was like, okay. So I like hopped out the pool, and then she came out. And she came out kind of very quickly, actually. Head, and then turned and shoulders came out. And again, the transition is intense, but I found the whole thing very empowering. I found the whole thing really like amazing and magical. There were different stages that were hard, and I think with the hypnobirthing I was never calling it pain, and I was trying to call it surges, and so then when she was out I was like, oh wow, and it's like quite a relief. She was on my chest. My partner Jamie, I think because they'd seen blood and because we were high risk, they called an ambulance automatically, which is actually quite good because they called an ambulance when I was still pregnant, and they always bring 2 ambulances when you're still pregnant. So there's suddenly 2 ambulances turned up. So I think he went into a little bit of like anxiety mode. It was like, what's happening? Why is there ambulances? And he's a bit squeamish, which is ridiculous. So he didn't want to see the actual birth bit. Right? So he then came back in once. I think I didn't know that, but he sort of left the room. But Deborah was there with me all the way through anyway. Came back in. Marnie was born on my chest. Really lovely. That was such a like euphoric, amazing moment. We were just there, and so then. The placenta, this is the bit I was saying about, because I'd had a cesarean, the placenta slightly attached to the scar wound. But also again, because I was high risk, I think the midwives were being slightly more cautious, and I think it backfired actually, in hindsight. So that was the birthing bit, and the whole of the birthing bit was magical, and it happened, and she was born at home, and she was born in her waters, which is why we called her Marnie, because it means of the sea. And then the second bit was that when the placenta was trying to come out, because I'd had a bit of a bleed, they were like, we're going to give you the injection, which I'd said no to at that point, but I think for whatever reason, because they thought it was the safest option, they gave me the injection, but she didn't bleed very much time. She literally gave me the injection and was like, and now we're going to pull the placenta out. Whereas I think even with the injection, you need to give it a little bit of time. So she pulled and was like, oops, I pulled the umbilical cord off. I was like, oh gosh, okay. So at that point they were like, right, now we actually want you to go to a hospital just because we don't know what will happen with the placenta. Now in hindsight, by the time I got to the hospital, the placenta was just out anyway. So if I'd stayed at home, I could have just not gone to the hospital potentially. But again, I think they were being slightly more at risk, and in that point, they'd sort of taken over. They kind of, once the baby's born, they sort of take over that process. So yeah. But it was like, nobody was stressed about it. All the paramedics came in and were like, we just have to take you. But it wasn't quite, that was the worst bit, because my body was still trying to contract the placenta out, and I had to lie back. They didn't want it to come out in case too much blood came out with it. But in hindsight, the placenta staying in me pooled. And so that's when I actually lost the most blood, because the placenta hadn't come out. So anyway, we did have then a little transfer to the hospital, which is actually quite a good point to mention, that if you do have, and the home birth, it didn't get in the way of the wonderful home birth, it was still lovely. But if you do have a transfer once the baby's born, they often can't come with you, so have the car seat and everything ready. But again, that was why I was quite positive. There were 2 ambulances, so Jamie and Marnie went in one, we went in one, got to the hospital. By the time we got to the hospital, they're like, oh, your placenta's come away, obviously. So we were like, okay. So again, it's that thing of like, obviously they didn't want to take that risk at that point. What happens if it had come out? But I then had a very uncomfortable. But the other positive about that is, we were quite far from the hospital, and so that's one of the things they'd said. That was one of the things that was freaking out my husband, like, oh my god, we're so far, and you think everything's going to be like, has to happen now, everything's like danger, like, we need to be able to get to the hospital in seconds. But actually, we didn't. We had a really lovely home birth, and when we needed to transfer, we got there, and they were very chilled. I remember the paramedics just chatting to me about like really benign things in the ambulance. I was like, really? Are we having this conversation? Okay. So anyway, we got to the hospital and nothing really needed to be happened. So anyway, the baby came back to me, and we had a night in hospital, which was a bit of a shame because obviously I was hoping for the positive about the home birth is then you just get to cuddle up in bed with the baby. But luckily nothing bad happened. So it was just they were being overly cautious, I think, because I was already a high risk, and so it's very difficult. I think Deborah was telling me afterwards that, which is something to pay attention to, that the managing of the placenta, they tend to be really overly cautious about it at the moment because of like hemorrhages and stuff. So it might be something to note, in that stage that you're kind of more aware that to say, no, it's okay, we can let it, I don't know. But anyway, being in hospital was actually totally fine. Got lovely toast and a cup of tea, and it was already late by that point, it was already the evening, so obviously we stayed in overnight, and they wanted to do checks on me throughout the night. My blood levels all like maintained, so it was totally fine. So then we went home the next morning, and so then we got to go back and get in bed. But Marnie was also totally unscathed by the whole transfer to the hospital, and it was about an hour altogether before she was back on me. She hadn't even noticed and was back on my chest, and we were back at home. And yeah, her knowing that she was born at home, and the birth itself was really relaxing and really chilled. And I really stand by the fact that having a doula and someone there that we knew what we were doing just took out all the stress of us. We could totally relax into it, be really present for the birth. And I think that, again, if you're in hospital, if anything crops up, they're much more likely to rush you to do other choices. So the actual birth was really straightforward. It was really lovely. It was relatively fast. It was like kind of most of the Sunday, but as I said, it was just sort of gently ramped up, and then she was born. And yeah, so the whole thing was really amazing. And the recovery was so much better. The connection was so much better. The after process was so much better. The whole thing was just so much, yeah. And I gave myself permission, I think maybe because of the home birth, to be really much slower in the early stages with her, whereas for some reason, maybe because it was the abrupt arrival with cesarean, I sort of was doing a lot more and got exhausted. So yeah, all in all, we had an amazing birth. We had a little mini trip to the hospital afterwards, which is a shame. But again, I think that was probably them being overly cautious of the procedure in the end, probably because I was a high risk. But yeah, I was very proud that we'd chosen and gone ahead against all the odds, because also family and friends were trying to put me off, and obviously every time the midwives here are amazing though, because they're really, keep home birth. So they were all behind me from the beginning. I had Ollie, the midwife, and she's brilliant, and she was just behind me. She had all her home birth. She was just no brainer, which is what it should be, because actually home birth has never been safer. If anything, again, if any of the things that happened, so like the injection, they had it there for me. The gas net, they had it there for me on the home birth. So they have all the stuff that. They have all the if anything wrong with the baby breathing, they have all the stuff there. So if anything goes wrong with the home birth, they've got all the stuff there anyway. So home birth has actually never been safer. And it's, again, if you are in any way inclined that you feel safer in your space at home, then I really think it's the way to go with birthing. So yeah, that's our story.